Hey guys, Ben here. Welcome back to another video on The Flash Season 9. Today we're going to be doing my review / breakdown for episode 6. So if you do go on to enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future DCTV videos later this year. So this is the first interlude. Obviously this is post Red Death. So Red Death is gone. She's been defeated. That was wrapped up last episode in episode 5 when Batwoman showed up, and in this episode we have very little Barry and Iris. They are actually going away as part of their baby moon adventures, and I'm going to be honest here guys, this is going to be a ranty video because this episode was the worst episode of the season by far, and I think one of the worst episodes of The Flash in years since season 4. And again, this kind of makes sense considering this is one of the worst villains they ever introduced to the show, that being Becky Sharp aka Hazard, and she is back and it is full on cringe guys. I'm telling you, why was this episode a thing? We're going to be talking about that and lots more in this video, but first things first, I want to give a shout out to my current top tier members of the channel. Big shout out to Nathan Bell, Flash Freak, Bradley, Matthew, Jose and Owlwatch. Plus also a big thank you to all of you who support the channel by being a member or sending in super chats or super thanks, which you can now do on videos. I've seen quite a few of you guys have been doing that, so I really appreciate your support towards the channel. But let's get into today's video. This is what you're here to listen to, and I'm sure most people that are going to be talking about tonight's episode are going to be a bit ranty as well, because this by my books was like a 2 out of 10 episode maximum, like maybe even like a 1 out of 10. It was literally so bad. It was one of the worst episodes of The Flash, period. And I think the main thing is, you really wonder who thought this was a good idea. Clearly they knew that this episode was coming. There would be an episode or two in this 13 episode season where Barry and Iris wouldn't be around. They would be in for like 2 scenes maximum. And so they had to think, okay, how can we do this interlude? We need an episode without Barry and Iris. How can we make it interesting? And somehow they led to, let's do an episode on Becky Sharp and have the main focus on Cecile and Allegra and have like the worst, most cringy moments. I don't know. Anyway, let's get into this and break down this episode bit by bit. So the episode begins with Becky Sharp doing the Flash monologue, the typical, my name is Barry Allen and I am the fastest man alive, but instead she says, my name is Becky Sharp and I am the luckiest woman alive. She somehow survived Crisis and she knows about Crisis, as she reveals in her monologue, which makes no sense. She got married and everything is like all good for her until one day after she was proposed to, all of her luck went out the window, so she gets absolutely shredded by some mud in the montage. Also, her husband is supposedly killed, but he's actually in a coma, so absolutely nothing is going her way. It's also revealed her husband is the gambler from the comics, who is a DC Comics character. You don't really get to see much of him. He's definitely not some sort of big villain, although it is revealed that he is a gambler, so he's literally got the name down. But in the comics his main power is just the fact that he's a great gambler and he commits crimes motivated by profit, using his knowledge for his own gain. And so yeah, he could technically be the actual gambler like they reference, but nothing in this has proven to us that he is that character, because we don't literally see him apart from when he's in the initial montage at the start, so he's not an important character. But Cecile finds her way onto Becky's case as Becky is set up for the fall for the attack on her fiance, but they shortly after find the weapon, which is in fact one of Becky's heels, so again the blame is put on her. But for some silly reason CCPD let her out of prison and literally have no police looking after her or even just watching her, which again makes no sense. I feel like all rules are out the window in terms of reality in this episode. Nothing makes sense here. And so she comes along with Cecile and Allegra on the case as they try and figure out what's going on. Who does her fiance actually owe this money to? And so they come after her many times throughout this episode, which we'll get to in a minute. And so let's talk about Barry and Iris. So at the start of the episode, we get to see them for a second, and literally they're gone for the whole episode. Like, I feel this is the biggest detriment to the entire episode, and every time this happens, it's just so evident. And especially in the Flash's final season, it makes you question, why not have an actual good episode where you could have focused on more interesting characters? Like, maybe they could have got Jay Garrick in for an interlude episode about him or some other species. Like last season there was an interlude with Nora. It was really interesting. The season before that you had the Cisco episode, which was really interesting. But with this and like last season's Allegra episode, they're some of the worst episodes ever, and that's just due to the fact that Allegra is a really bad character and Cecile is a really bad character, and yet they are the focal point of this episode. Plus also they bring back one of the worst villains from season 4. I feel like Eric Wallace just did this for lols. I just can't understand why they would come up with this idea for the episode and be like, this is going to be great. Were they literally thinking, okay, this is going to get memed online, so this is going to be good for our exposure? That's the only thing I can think of. I just don't understand how anyone in their right mind would be like, okay, Barry and Iris are gone, so let's do a Cecile, Allegra, and Becky Sharp episode. Yes, that sounds like an amazing episode for our final season. I think the most annoying thing for me is the fact that it's the final season and it's a waste of time, and Eric Wallace has said that there's been little time for anything else, and yet this episode is so random, so out of nowhere. Like, you can literally skip this episode and it doesn't matter in terms of the course of the season. The only somewhat relevant thing is Keone, and that's about it, and it only really is important right at the end of the episode with the big revelation to do with Chester and Keone finding out the results that in fact Keone is not a human. So this is the most interesting thing. We'll get to that in a minute. So with Cecile and Allegra on the case, they are, I guess, bonding in this episode, but they go over, they interview a potential suspect who is the brother of Becky's fiance. So at this point, he is a suspect, so why is there no police there? Again, that's just another big nitpick of mine. It just makes absolutely no sense in terms of reality. And so Cecile and Allegra question him. He seems kind of falsely into this whole idea, so clearly something else is going on. And then shortly after this, Becky is kidnapped, like I said earlier, and Cecile's powers, she tries to use them but they fail, and you're like, what is going on here? Is it something to do with the bad luck, or is it something to do with Cecile? And so Allegra doesn't even try to use her powers, which is just absolutely mind-blowing to me, because she's supposed to be really powerful, and yeah, she never thinks to use her powers until the very last second. And she does use her powers here, but it's like right at the end of it, and she literally knocks them out. But they are on the ground behind the bar, and they literally get up in a second and run away scot-free. Plus, we've seen their faces, so why are they not scared? Why are we not reporting this to the police, explaining what they look like and where they hang out? We know where they hang out. They hang out at the bar. Yes, it is kind of to do with the mob and stuff, but clearly you can see in terms of maybe some CCTV footage or anything that these are the bad guys. They need to be put away because they're going out to people, kidnapping people, using guns. But this just does not go through Cecile and Allegra's mind. They don't even think about putting these guys away, and even at the end of the episode when they defeat them, they just leave them there. The police don't show up, nothing. Like, it makes no sense. So I think that's my main problem again with this episode. It's just very senseless. Okay, so Keone at Star Labs is doing tests, and this is because Mark and Chester think she has powers. And so Mark reveals that his insides were a mess, and apparently Gideon said that he shouldn't be alive. There is no way that with what happened to him, he should be here today, but the kiss saved her. And so I thought it was curious that he referenced Gideon. We haven't seen Gideon in a while, but we were probably going to see more Gideon towards the end of the season, considering that we're probably going to go back to the night that Nora was killed. Plus, we know in the future Barry creates Gideon, so maybe at the end of the season we could get Barry creating Gideon. I just wanted to mention that because I think that was an interesting reference, and there's a couple of other references in this episode to like Goldface, which are like minor saving graces that they are kind of distracting us from what's going on in this episode. And so Kyon continues to test her powers, and she's like, Ice Blast activate, go Ice go, and nothing works. Like, it's clear that Mark is trying to make her into Frost because he believes she has powers, and it was in that kiss that he realized maybe there's a chance that Frost or even like a tiny bit of her could be in there. However, it doesn't make too much sense considering this is Caitlyn's body, it's not actual Frost's body. But when I was watching the scene, I think it was made pretty clear to us that she's probably going to have no offensive powers, and just the way that she acts in general seems like Kyon's powers are going to be all kind of defensive or to do with nature, so nothing threatening. And so meanwhile, we have this story going on with Cecile and Allegra. It's laughably bad, and they're always talking about how her bad luck is emanating off of her. But seriously, it begs the question, why did no one think to put a meta dampener on her? If she is still a meta, which she presumably is, you could literally dampen her powers and she wouldn't be unlucky anymore. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And at this point, she believes she's getting what she deserves because she's been ruining everyone's life lately, but little does she know the actual ring is the main problem causing her to be unlucky, and so that's obviously affecting everyone around her. So the bad guys show up again, kidnap Becky properly this time, take her to the bar and make her do some poker games. And so Allegra and Cecile show up to the bar, and Allegra actually uses her powers this time straight away, and the villain has some tech or like a EMP/dampener. I want to emphasize that this is actually in the hallway, this isn't at the bar, they go to the bar next. But not before Cecile and Allegra talk about how Cecile feels that she's failing as a mother, but also as a hero, and Cecile is freaking out that she can't do this anymore. But Allegra gives her like a mini pep talk and convinces her that she's a superwoman, which I thought was a funny reference. And then also later in the episode, Cecile calls herself a superwoman. So yeah, interesting choice of words. But in terms of Cecile being a mother and a hero, I just haven't understood this since the start, because she's choosing to be a hero over looking after her child, and no wonder she feels bad. I don't see it as a surprise at all, because she's away from her kid for like 5-6 days a week. You literally see them for like 1, maybe maximum 2-3 days. So that's just bad parenting. I'm sorry to say it, but that's the truth. To her daughter, Cecile is just going to be like a visiting friend or a divorced mum, because that's the kind of situation that they're in. I understand that it's because Jesse L. Martin's not going to be around, and so they wanted a reason to get him out of the city and out of the show. But I just, again, like, there is no logic here as to the story that they're trying to tell, especially with Cecile in this episode. And so let's talk about Mark, because Mark is just like freaking out over Kyon kissing him. But as he does this, suddenly out of nowhere it starts snowing in Star Labs. And so this is Kyon's powers working, and again, it must be emphasized at this point we have no idea why this is happening. And so at the end of the episode, the post-credit scene is that Kyon has 0% dark matter, it turns out, and no cold fusion. So this was part of the test that Chester was doing, and he even sent it over to another lab to be double checked, and it's been confirmed that in fact Kyon is not a metahuman, but also she's not a human. She's missing huge strands of her DNA, like most of her DNA. So what is she? Is she Mother Nature itself? That is probably along the lines of what they're trying to go for. This was definitely the most interesting part of the episode, because it sets up what's to come next. Apart from this, I feel like everything else was throwaway, and you can literally skip this episode. But before Barry and Iris get back, we go over to the bar, and you see Dom's brother, who is constantly smirking. It's just like terrible acting as he exploits Becky for her luck, and he's just winning so much money. But then Cecile is able to get the ring off of Becky, and Becky gets her luck back, and the gun backfires against one of the thugs, and she stops the brother-in-law. So that is it in regards to the story. Like, it's literally pointless and has no consequences. It is literally just here for the sake of it. It's a filler episode to its core. So after this, as we go towards the end of the episode, Barry and Iris do return from their little trip. Iris has different hair. She looks very cool and very funky, but they are surprised by Team Flash, who throw a baby shower at their apartment. So this was kind of a nice scene, but it was very, very short. So they literally come back, they react, they're like, oh my god, what's going on? And that is it. The episode is done. We get the post-credit scene, and that is it. Like, it's such a waste of an episode. I really didn't like this. This is like a 1 out of 10 episode, and that's just due to the fact that Barry and Iris aren't here, and you really feel it. And this episode is totally inconsequential. It's cringy, and it's just a huge waste of time. I think that's all I can say. It's so random. I have no idea why Eric Wallace approved this, or whoever came up with this really needs to come out with like a public apology, because it was so bad. But hopefully you enjoyed this review. It was way more ranty than usual. I'm never normally this emotionally annoyed by an episode. I have to say I'm a very lenient person, especially when it comes to The Flash, because I love The Flash, and so when I'm criticizing it, that's because it's bad. And I just can't believe this is the final season and we're wasting an episode on this. But next week's episode looks really good. It's with Nia and Iris and Barry. They're all teaming up together. Can't wait for the Supergirl crossover in that episode. So I actually need to clarify, it's not next week, it's the week after, so there is a 1 week break. But for now, if you did enjoy this video, even if you didn't like the episode, please be sure to leave a like and a comment. I really want to hear, what do you guys think? I think a lot of you guys are going to be in agreement with me. Also, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. And for now, you can click on the top right corner of the screen to watch my latest video, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.
I see rare.